I really think if you're not considering marketing strategy outside of referrals, you're going to run into some problems down the line because buyer preferences are changing. The millennial and Gen X buyer is different from the silent generation and the boomers. They are more researched. They'll go look up someone online, consume their content, like follow them for a handful of months before they reach out. Like
that's like last on the order of operations now. So you might go follow this guy on Twitter, been following him for 3 months. Gonna look at his website, gonna fill out the application, taking Thomas Kopelman method, right? Schedule an introductory call, client.
It's easier than ever for firms with limited resources to balance an outbound motion and a sort of an always-on content marketing strategy. Okay, powerful stuff. Are we recording? Yeah, cool. Okay. So if we're moving on from Horse Girl a little bit.
Yeah.
If you don't know, now you know.
If you don't know, now you know. Okay, let's get into it. Will, it's good to see you here. This is our first host-only episode together.
Yeah, I'm excited.
I love it. First of all, we came a long way from Big Later to Altruist and now hosting the podcast together. For everybody that's listening to this podcast, watching, however you consume the advisor journey, Will is now my partner in wealth. And I'm happy to have him here. He's been the head of content for Altruist for over 3 years now.
Time flies.
We've seen a bunch of raises in capital, a bunch of advisors on board to the platform, and now I get to spend some extra time with you. So I'm excited.
It's awesome. And when we first met, like neither of us had kids.
Yeah.
You have 2, and I've got 1 and 2 coming, and it's just like it's kind of cool to just see those different stages of life.
No, for sure. It's great to go on a journey with you. While you're here, in this kind of introduction of yourself, what are you excited about being a host?
I'm excited about taking all the Horse Girl pictures that I have on my computer off my screen. What am I excited about? Well, I think one of the most rewarding parts of my job is the amount of time that I get to spend with advisors. Like just the other day, drove down to Salem, Oregon to meet a firm in their office. We had lunch. We talked about AI. We talked about Altruist. We talked about their growth. It's just a deeply satisfying part of this. And I probably, certainly haven't spent as much, never spent time in the role, but as far as like the relationships I have with the people who are at the absolute, forefront of high growth RIAs, like I think I get a little bit more time with those people than most. And it's awesome to tell their stories, to get them in here to listen to the tactics and the strategies they have to share. But I also feel like as a sort of a marketing leader at Altruist, I have a lot to offer to those people as well. So, you're not going to get the depth, I would say, that Jason, and the experience that Jason brought, but as someone who's in the trenches, especially with marketing, with content, with all the tooling that I think so many firms are probably interested to hear something about, like I'll probably have a little bit to add.
Well, I think you should give yourself more credit. You started a company, Big Later, right? And Big Later was a financial education company that we sort of partnered on. And that story is crazy because that's the
power of Twitter is what it is.
The power of Twitter introduced you to Jason. Why don't you tell that story so the audience can get some context on how you even arrived at it?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm sure this is something that most advisors have something in common with this story where it's like at some point in your life, there was a moment where you felt drawn to finance. And for me, like this is sort of embarrassing, but just because of how tropish it is, but like I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that just set me off on a path. And then from there, read the entire like canon of classic finance literature. And it took me 6 months, like to get through it, like at a pretty quick pace. But it's like looking around, I was thinking 23 or something like that at the time. Like none of my peers were doing anything like that. And I just realized like, okay, if, there's a reason they weren't doing it. Like it's just tough. It's tough to know, where to go after. It's tough to stay in it. Like it's a bit of a slog, right? And so the concept of Big Later was like, hey, how do we take the basics of this, very education forward, but pack it full of humor and make it engaging, put a sweet little brand on top of it, deliver everything by email. Right as I was kind of getting started with this, I hit you up on Twitter. We had never met, but I was just like,
why'd you hit me up? I was just,
you just seem like a cool guy. And 7 years later, we've confirmed that to be true.
Thanks.
So that, bringing you into that ultimately gave some exposure to Big Later to some of the folks at Altruist. Jason ended up reaching out to me. And then, a couple of steps later, brought on to Altruist as the head of content. And that was just about 3 years ago.
Yeah, Jason, I remember being on a Zoom with Jason. I was sharing your stuff all over the place. She was like, this Will Steiner guy, huh? Like, how is he? Like, I really like his work, and the rest is history, and you're here today. So glad to have you, man. We're going to take this by storm. The content is just getting better with time, and I'm excited for today's conversation on AI. Now, you have been in the weeds with AI at the Altruist Academy. If you haven't gone to the Altruist Academy, please be on the lookout for the next drop. We're going on a countrywide tour, it seems like, this year. Exceptional
Chicago
content. Chicago's next?
Yep.
So why don't you kick this off? As you said, you're in the trenches with advisors. What are your thoughts on how advisors can do this using AI? Because to be quite honest, there's a subset of advisors who are like, no way, man, I'm not going to use AI. And then you see these fast-growing advisors that are like, absolutely, I'm going to implement this in every and any part of my business that I can. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way I've described it at academies in the past is like, it's like an army of valedictorians, like super capable, high agency, eager, but like they're still high school students, you know? So it's like, know where it makes sense to tap into this resource and know where perhaps there's a line that you don't want to cross. And for advisors, that could be, you know, you want to be careful with sensitive client information.
Right.
Like this is sort of why, like at this point in time, if this is like our little state of AI episode, you know, maybe we'll do a couple of these, but we'll have to, obviously. Marketing is such a great place to start. You know, it's low risk, it's high reward. You don't have to use sensitive information and put, you know, PII at risk potentially. And the tools are just, they're so tuned to sort of like repurposing certain, you know, a piece for a newsletter, or for a LinkedIn post, or for some social media, or whatever it may be, a script for video. So like on the webinar the other day, like I walked some advisors exactly how I create pieces with this thing called, you know, an idea called super prompts. And the concept of a super prompt and what makes, you know, the idea is to give AI all the context that it needs while not taking out the parts that are very sort of human that make content great.
Right.
So like, for example, when I am writing a piece for Altruist, let's say I'm going to do a blog post about like building, you know, using client testimonials on your website, for example, which is something that if you are listening to this and you're an advisor and you have a website, you should be doing.
Hopefully you
But there may be some questions, right? It's like they may be wondering, like, how do I do that? How do I do it compliantly? The first thing that I'll do is I'll do a massive, massive drop of information into ChatGPT. I say, before we do anything, I want you to ingest this information about our reader and our cause. And I'll tell them exactly who we're writing for, right? It's the independent RIA. They are client-centric. They're tech-forward. They're forward-thinking. They are, you know, they care deeply about client outcomes and the relationships that they're building. And I'll tell them all about the problems that we care about, right? Now, you could do this sort of context dump. You could do it for your own firm. You could talk about your niche. You could talk about the problems that the people in your niche are facing. You could talk about what you do about those things, what you're trying to achieve with your content. For Altruist, it's building trust and credibility, it's clarifying our differentiation, shaping perception, and driving engagement. And then I'll finish this off. And again, this is like a 2-page drop that anyone is welcome to reach out to me on LinkedIn and I'll share with you. But I'll finish some things about our brand messaging. And from there, the AI will be like, oh, great. Like, okay, let's go. That's when I'll get into the next piece of this super prompt. And you can tell me if I'm getting too into the weeds here, but like, I think it was one of those things where I sort of shared and people reached out immediately to get these prompts. So again, for anyone listening, feel free to reach out. But the next thing I'll do is I'll get into the main beats of the piece and I'll go through the topic, what we're trying to accomplish with the piece, the most important idea. Like if there was one thing that they're going to walk away from, what should that be? From there, like we're not even at the point where we have an outline yet.
Did we not press send yet?
We've sent this, but every time I'm sending it, I'm like, you don't need to do anything. I just want you to ingest this information. I'll do a little research, bring in some data for credibility, then we'll outline. So now, granted, like I could have just been like, let's write an article about client testimonials, and it would have been probably pretty okay. But for the extra 2 minutes of inputs for this, I get something that's way more specific to my niche, you know, has my perspective built into it. And then by the time we're finally drafting, it's a lot closer to where I would want it to be so that when I read it out loud, it sounds like me or it sounds like the Altruist brand.
Yeah, I love that. You know, I have a confession to make. Not going to lie to you. I hate the term or the title prompt engineer. I hate it.
It feels a little pretentious.
It does. I don't like it. Prompt engineer. But what you did was give us a formula for making the best content or the best use of any chats that you put into the system. So it's like creating a soup, right? You need all the ingredients, right, to get the best soup that you need. And I think on a grand scale, just pulling the curtain back a little bit, advisors should think about that for every part of their business. Like, what do you need to grow, right? Think about who you're serving. Think about the type of business that you want to run. Think about the timeline, right? And really outline all of those different components to give yourself a solid game plan. Now you have ChatGPT to help you with that game plan.
For sure.
Versus even, I started independent advising in 2015 or 16. I had no tools. You know what I mean? It was just, hey, I'm going to sit with myself in my apartment and figure out how I'm going to grow this thing.
Right.
And you have so much support if you're using the process that you outlined, getting all of those ingredients to really give yourself a better way to approach any problem that you have. And that's why I think, AI is important, because now, you don't need to hire a coach. Well, you could, right? But you have someone in your pocket to kind of bounce ideas off of.
Yeah, I mean, use it to ask questions about how to use it more effectively. Like, one of the coolest things that's right on the that's coming with some of these tools, it's coming with ChatGPT. It already exists with Claude, is the ability for the tool to reference your Google Drive. Mm-hmm. And this means that if you build these ingredients in one place, the tools can go in and reference those things for anything that you would create in the future. That could be a newsletter, it could be a communication, it could be some educational piece, whatever. Like, you can do the work once and reap the benefits of calling on it with AI time and time again.
I want to say that AI makes things easier, but I think if you're using AI the right way, you're doing a lot of upfront work. So it might be harder in the beginning. And I think that's something that advisors and professionals alike need to understand. Just because you get Opus clips doesn't mean that it's going to make it perfect, right? AI, like you said, is still a high school valedictorian, and they need ushering, they need training, right? So I think what you are really highlighting in the episode is that, hey, you have all the tools at your disposal, but there's still upfront work. There's still a learning curve, especially for those older, more seasoned advisors, right? You're still going to have to learn how to do these things. So again, it's going to make it easier, but you should expect to do some work. I feel like I see a lot of advisors using AI wrong. What they're doing is like, what stocks have performed best this year? And that's it, right? So you get a very shallow description or very shallow support.
Right.
And that's not the way that you want to.
No, so much of it comes back to, garbage in, garbage out. Like, into this, this is where the quote unquote prompt engineering comes in, where it's like, the more context you can provide, the more clarity you can give, the more expectation setting you can do to the tool. I mean, again, it's like, you have to be relatively explicit and detailed. If you spend the time to do that, great, you're going to get a better outcome. And if you spend the time to build systems that help you do that quicker, more efficiently, even better. And then you have something to improve. Like, you've built a process now that's your sort of AI, the groundwork of your AI content strategy, or just your ChatGPT strategy, whatever it may be. And then it's just about tweaking the inputs.
Yeah. So I think right now we're focused on the advisor, right? The person that is going to sit across from the client and is going to talk to them about whatever, making their marketing, putting their ideas or their thought leadership into the atmosphere. That's one part of AI. But I think another very talked about part of AI is like replacing jobs, right? People are like, hey, well, AR is going to come and take all of our jobs. How do you feel about that? I have a take on it, but what's your take?
There is definitely something to be concerned about. Yeah. Like, I know the thing we all hear is it's not AI that's going to replace you. It's, it's a person who's using AI. And I really do think that's true. But I also think that there's some dimension of like entry-level work that is just going to start disappearing. The entry-level jobs of today are just going to change, as they always have in the past. It's not like what we needed now, just because those things go away, doesn't mean there aren't going to be entry-level jobs that we need in the future. So it's tough to predict, but the whole, hey, it's not going to be a person, it's not going to be AI, it's going to be a person using AI, like, that is true.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So shout out Jason Wang. I'm not trying to make any wide sweeping predictions like he said in his LinkedIn post, but I do think that most jobs will be optimized, right? People are going to use AI, so we're spot on about that. And there will be actually more opportunity because AI is in sort of the equation. So I think that many more kids will probably go to school trying to study machine learning and trying to study artificial intelligence. Maybe in the next 2 to 5 years, that might be a major at some of the most prestigious colleges, if it's not already.
Right.
So I just think it changes. We had an interview with Michael Kitces maybe last year, and Michael Kitces talked about his time as an advisor at his first firm. It was 4 advisors average revenue per advisor was, I think, $300,000, right? But they had 12 people at that firm. So they had a person at the door greeting people. Then they had somebody that just took the envelopes out and filed them because that was a SEC rule that you had to do that. They had a compliance person, all of these people to make the firm go. In his latest research at that time, it only took like 2 advisors to produce that same amount of revenue, so $1.2 million. That is a product of technology just coming along. 2 advisors, 1 support staff, 3 people now can generate $1.2 million in revenue.
Right. And those ratios are just going to get more advantageous for revenue generating headcount. It's going to be 3 advisors to 1 support staff, right? So you go from 1.2 to 1.8 for...
Or 1 to 1.
Well, I think you'd want more advisors to fewer support staff. I think if you're using the tech, and you've got your sort of baseline tech needs met before you layer on AI, but once you do start layering on AI, like the back office stuff is just going to get insanely efficient.
Agree. So when I think about like what jobs look like, I think you're just going to be able to do more with less, right? But those people that might have had those entry-level jobs, they'll be more equipped to do more.
Right.
So.
Totally.
Awesome. I want to talk about tools. I know you have a ton of tools that you're using for AI.
For sure.
Right? So let's try to keep this kind of in relation to advisors.
Sure.
But what tools are you suggesting for advisors to take a look at? Obviously, ChatGPT has to be
ChatGPT is absolutely up there. I mean, another one that is maybe a bit of a sleeper that is, it's not true. It's not really AI, but it is and it isn't, is called Whisperflow, WISPR flow. And it's a dictation tool. And I can just hold the function key on my computer and talk into my computer. And what I say is formatted, like the dictation is done really, really, really well. I'll talk to ChatGPT, like I'll use it in the text box. Like I know that, but I could use it for anything. Like I can use it for a text message. I can use it in Slack. I can use it for email. And I'm just talking at my computer, and it feels a little funny, but it's like a massive time saver, right? You can talk faster than you can type.
Are you doing that now? Are you using
as we speak? Yeah, right.
Yeah, I'm looking at the website right now. Think it, speak it, send it.
It's so great. It's like a huge. There's a couple of these tools. Whisperflow isn't the only one. The other tool that I'm not using it yet, but I'm extremely excited about it. It's called AirOps. And AirOps is like a workflow builder it brings in all the different LLMs together. So you could be using, ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, but you essentially build these multi-step workflows and it'll execute pulling in the right, tool where you see fit. So that's exciting from a content creation standpoint. You build a workflow for a blog and it'll say, hey, okay, what's the topic? Like sort of similar to the super prompt thing, but then it'll go do the Google search. It'll pull all the top results. It'll research everything, it'll give you suggestions on what the title should be. It'll give you an outline, and like you can really dial in the moments where you want human input, and everything else just runs on its own.
Do you like that? Do you feel good about that?
I feel good about it for some things.
Okay,
I think there are some things that absolutely I would rather be writing every word for.
Okay. How did you come to the point where you're like, it's good for this and not for this? Because I think that's the place where people have a lack of understanding and confusion. Like, it's just going to take everything, or it's not going to do anything. And there's this space in the middle that you've seemed to figure out. So how do you make that determination?
I think it's like stakes. What's at stake here? If it's educational content, or like if I'm trying to create a guide, or helping breakaways navigate some component of compliance, or helping, existing firms think about hiring, or like, a lot of the practice management content we do, I'm like more than happy to come to the table and be like, here's our perspective on this, but can you do AI? Can you do some of the heavy lifting? Now for something like the occasional thing, where I'm editing something that Jason has written, or, helping to draft something that's kind of a critical communication, maybe internally or to customers. It's like those words, they carry a lot more weight.
Absolutely.
So until I feel like, oh wow, AI can do this so much better than me across the board, which I don't think that's that far off.
Yeah.
But for now it is. That's kind of how I manage that balance. I don't know. What's your stance on this? What do you like to use it for? What do you? keep to yourself?
I'm kind of like a founder mode type of guy, man. So even though I use AI, I'm like trying to make sure that it sounds like me. I'm a dude that's cursing at ChatGPT. Like, this does not sound like me. You know what I mean? So I'm like
use your
hands-on.
super prompts.
I should use super prompts. So that was an educational moment for me. But
you're not just shipping it. You're not just letting it. I mean, I'm not doing that, right? The thing is, when we use these tools, it's like now I can spend, instead of 2 hours researching, writing, and then editing, I just spend 15 minutes editing.
Yeah.
So, and that's not, and it's like, the tricky thing about that is like you end up doing, it's not like you're just spending 15 minutes of, working. Now it's like the expectation is, okay, let's do 8x as much as we were doing before.
Yeah. I agree.
Which is great.
Right now, I really just use it for clarifying my thinking.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what I need AI for right now, and some efficiency with workflows. Right. Just making sure that things get to where they got to get.
Do you use the image generation at all with the 4.0 model?
I tried. I don't like it too much. Are you talking about Sora?
No, I'm talking about ChatGPT. If you go to the 4.0 model, okay. So I guess really quick on some of the terminology here for everybody's benefit. The 01 and 03 models, including the 03 mini, are the reasoning models. Mm-hmm. And they'll think through, quote unquote, think through the steps and take a little bit longer to do that sort of processing before they give you an example. 03 is incredible. I highly suggest people give it some sort of, somewhat analytical thing to consider and just watch it work and experience it that way. 4.0 is now this sort of like the latest and greatest image generation model, which just got a massive upgrade. And I really suggest everyone take a picture of their office and say, hey, how can I make this space a little bit more inviting? Or like, what art should go on the walls here? Give me some suggestions. Like, there's a million things. We used 4.0 we're going to redesign the space in here. So 4.0 is amazing for image generation. And then ChatGPT 4.5 is currently the best one for like anything creative. The writing is, I think, a little bit better. I don't think it's as good as Claude 3.7.
I've never used Claude.
It's a slightly better writer. Sometimes you can just like, okay, I'll take something, I'll put it into 4.5. I'll then take the same thing, plug it into Claude 3.7, and then I might throw it into Grok. I feel like so ridiculous, like naming all this stuff, but it's kind of fun to see how the models compare to each other.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let me tell you about my favorite tool. It's called Clay. And I wish when I was actively practicing in my advisory practice, I had Clay. Because I started prospecting, door knocking. So I worked at Edward Jones, right? That was my first sort of go around with finding my own clients, doing like the full cycle client acquisition. And I was literally knocking on doors, taking a step 5 feet just to make sure that everybody was safe, and doing my pitch. I'm your local neighborhood financial advisor. I'm right down there. We should have a cup of coffee, right? I had to find these people. Hard. So much time. 8 hours a day just to maybe get 3 or 4 prospects in a day. But with Claude, I can go on. I can kind of filter out what I'm looking for. Hey, Clay, correct. Clay, and then it'll give me everything I need.
Right.
So, hey, these are VPs that work in Twitter, Netflix, or whatever the case is, specialized in equity compensation. And I'll say, enrich this data. What do I need? Emails, titles, last LinkedIn posts, right? What are they talking about? What are they interested in? Past jobs that they might have been at. And that just has done wonders in sort of my ventures and my creative endeavors.
So that's mostly business development then.
Mostly
like
business.
Outreach.
Cold outreach.
Business development. And we're going to have Finney on next month. And they're getting into that space as well. I know they kind of blew up after a little bit of like in a good way. But after a LinkedIn, some funding announcements. But
think about how advisors find clients now. Like most advisors are trying to build up their brand and their brand awareness to get referrals, right? Yeah. That takes so long. You're going to have to do some sort of organic outreach to have clients come in and to grow your firm. If you're not thinking about that or doing that actively now, you're dying. If you're not looking at something like this, Finney, Clay, it might be worth the look.
I think the other piece, again, it's like I'm a marketer, so it's kind of like all I have is a hammer, everything's a nail. I think video is the absolute best marketing tool out there because it's the richest medium, right? It's the one that most closely gives the person watching a sense of what working with you would be like. And there are really phenomenal tools now for video editing that I think make what was once probably like a kind of somewhat costly, time-consuming thing, like into a pretty easy, fast little session. Descript, for example,
Right.
has like a phenomenal editing tool, some great like AI features that simplify sound, audio quality and that sort of
Feed,
thing.
same thing.
Feed, yeah, CapCut. Like you kind of, based on what you want to do, there's a spectrum. Like obviously we use an amazing agency to shoot the podcast, and we're not paying $65 a month for that. But for the firm that's just trying to get some content out onto YouTube, like the tools are making it much easier than it once was.
I do think that there's a little bit of a barrier for advisors. So it might not be everything is accessible to these advisors, right? But it's some sort of mental barrier that prevents advisors from taking that next step and saying, like, I'm going to use these tools available to me, right? Playing sports, our coaches say, hey, you got to develop your toolbox. You might need to jump over somebody on the football field, right? Recover a fumble, dive on the floor, catch a ball, right? So you had these tools at your disposal when it was time to use them. But I feel like in this case, advisors know this landscape of all the tools for literally almost anything that they need to do. But the old way of doing business is still that sort of barrier from saying, hey, I'm going to do it this way. I would say maybe like 5% of advisors at Altruist right now are actively using AI to amplify growth in their practice. And that number should be closer to like 70, 80%.
Totally. I mean, and there's certainly an initial fear of like looking, for lack of a better term, like not great. Like looking dumb on video, or like it's awkward to be on video the first time. It's awkward to look into a camera and talk into a camera. It's something that definitely takes practice. But I really think if you're not considering marketing strategy outside of referrals, you're going to run into some problems down the line because buyer preferences are changing.
Correct.
Like the millennial and Gen X buyer is different from the silent generation and the boomers. They are more research. They will go they'll go look up someone online, consume their content, like follow them for a handful of months before they reach out. Like they're lurkers, right? And researchers. And that's not to say they don't also love social proof and referrals.
That's like last on the order of operations now, right? So you might go follow this guy on Twitter.
Right.
Been following him for 3 months. Gonna look at his website. Gonna fill out the application, taking Thomas Kopelman method, right? Schedule an introductory call, client. Maybe ask around to see if anybody's worked with him or whatever. Then they're a client. Whereas back in the day, pick up the phone, dial for dollars. I got a good idea. Do you want to buy or not? That whole buyer sequence is much different now than it is.
Yeah, and I love what you were saying about with Clay. Is like it's easier than ever for firms with limited resources to balance an outbound motion and a sort of an always-on content marketing strategy. Like for ChatGPT to generate sort of like that text, maybe just simple text-based social media posts, a blog post every now and then, a newsletter, the effort required has never been lower.
Right.
Clay now, if you are gonna do that outreach, like the level of personalization, it's easier to do it faster. The goal with all this stuff to be it's twofold. It's like get face to face, but also be around when someone has a compelling event in their life. Like it's not just, you can't just be there, exist on the internet. You have to be top of mind when someone goes through an experience where they're like, now is the time.
I'm retiring. Somebody just passed away.
Right, exactly.
My company just IPO'd, right? I want to move my parents in with me. I'm trying to buy a car, house, right? That has happened to me so many times. Just speaking about just the effect of the internet and marketing, I was on a podcast with Josh Brown, and this dude from New York is watching the podcast, reaches out to me. He's like, hey, my grandmother left all of her kids $450,000, and I need to figure out how to invest it. So that's like, from that moment on, I was like, everything that I have to do to prospect has to be online, right? Because somebody's watching, somebody's listening. Even if it's one view, that's somebody, right? And I think advisors, one, get impatient, have to get over their own egos, right? And two, needs to give it enough time to realize the power of the internet and the marketing efforts. And AI makes it all easier. So
that's kind of like, if we kind of come back to the top here, like the state of AI, like it's very, I think for advisors, the alpha is in marketing right now. I think we are going very soon, we'll be in a place where there's some more agentic functions for back office stuff, operations, service. But I think we're all, the SEC, the regulatory bodies are always going to make us pump the brakes on those things. There's going to be a lot of oversight. It's risky. I feel like, I've kind of joked about like, who's going to spin up like an AI insurance company for when your agents do something that you wouldn't have done yourself. Like, it will be very interesting to see how this unfolds. Everyone's trying to go, that's where the puck is going though, like agentic.
I agree. Why don't you break down AI agents for people that might not know?
The best, or like a description I saw about this more recently was like it's a goals-based operating system, essentially, where it's like you give something a task and it can perform it either through the browser or for application-to-application exchanges. I think MCP is the acronym for how that's kind of getting built out. APIs, like, I'm not a super technical person, but from my light reading, that's kind of the easiest way to think about it. You're essentially outsourcing a task to an AI agent.
Right.
That could be like, hey, a workflow I could imagine is like you do an initial onboarding call with a new client. You talk about the accounts that you want to open, where the information is going to, the information that you need to open those accounts. And after that transcript is processed, an agent can actually like go through, get that all set up. You would presumably there'd be some review and release, but like it's taking steps out of a workflow that maybe once required more human touches and speeding it up.
Scary stuff, man.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure. Well, let's wrap this up. I think it's important for advisors to get started. You've been in the weeds with this. If we can give them 1, 2, 3 on how to get started today, they've listened to this podcast episode. They're like, yo, they're right. I want to grow, right? And I'm not growing as fast as I would like. What are the 3 things that they should consider?
Baseline is a level of comfort with ChatGPT. It's the model that's raised, OpenAI has raised the most money. They're typically, making changes faster than pretty much everybody else. Like, get comfortable interfacing with ChatGPT, and that includes like trying out the different models. So like getting comfortable with ChatGPT is one of those things. The other thing is just staying on top of the developments. Like, my favorite resource, my favorite newsletter, and like no affiliation with these guys, just happy to give them a nice plug here, is that it's called Every. So EVERY, and the website is every.to. Amazing content, super educational. I feel like I can be right on the edge of what's coming, what just launched, how to use it, how to think about it. So I think that would be number 2, stay on top of the developments. And then number 3 is like, what do you think number 3 is? I'm like, those are the 2 big ones.
Get in the game, man.
Get in the game.
Number 3 is actually do. Like ChatGPT, I think that's awesome. That's practice. 2 is educate. And 3 is action, right? Yeah. Pick one function that you want to do better in, right? Maybe that's video. And begin to leverage AI to do that thing. So I think that would be the acronym.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Or the letters, right? So practice, educate, take some action. And I think you'll be far ahead of other advisors that have yet to do those 3 things.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in. It's been another episode of The Advisor Journey. I'm your host. Oh, that feels weird to say. Will Steiner with Dasarte Yarnway. You can find us on all the platforms where you can find podcasts. We'll also be on YouTube coming out for pretty soon here. So that's youtube.com/@altruist. Thanks everybody for listening.
Thank you for listening to The Advisor Journey by Altruist. Brokerage-related products and services are provided by Altruist Financial LLC, a member of FINRA/SIPC. Results may vary. Altruist and its affiliates do not provide tax or legal advice.